Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to your morning Maverick Pilgrim channel. I'm your Maverick Pilgrim right over here. Good friend
Here I
Matt
am,
Schumann. There he
back
is.
back at him, happy, excited. Love talking to you, brother. So it's a good
Oh,
time.
it's good. It's a good thing. And
Mhm.
just so that people know, we don't really talk a ton outside of this. We text, we stuff, but this is where we hang out. We hang out with all of you, whoever's watching this, and each other right here.
Abso-
So
Absolutely.
always looking forward to it. Today we're talking about what happens when they make your heroes. They make your heroes, they make your villains. So we've been talking about heroes, we've been talking about stories. So what happens when we get a hero that is not necessarily what we classically call a hero?
hmm One that is pushed, that has a narrative behind it. One that is not organic. That it happens quite often actually. You have it in fiction and then you have it in real life. So it's kind of fun to dissect and look at it.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to use a lot of examples that are sort of already in the memory banks, and kind of have a conversation. But we are going to kind of be leaning on the chat a little bit. If you guys have anything else to throw out there, we're going to start to talk about some of these things. But please toss that out there. We are going to be talking about some not kind of current stuff, and so I'll throw up the spanner, the spoiler banner. I called it the spanner. Maybe that's what we call it now. The spoiler banner. Just so you know, like when we're talking about something that could be spoilery, so you could kind of fast forward a little bit or pause and then wait for it to be, then whatever, however you do you do you. Um, yeah, I don't think this one's a sermon. I think this one's just this is a chat. This is a convo.
Yep.
Convo. That's where we're going with today. So heroes, we've been talking about heroes. Heroes are important. Heroes are a
Mhm.
big deal. Everybody has them, whether you really recognize or not, right? And I think we've talked about that. For you, Chuman, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Wasn't he the big
Yeah,
hero
for the
for you?
kid, 100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting when you talk about Hollywood actors or characters, that kind of fits into what we're talking about,
Oh yeah, because they're
right?
playing it. They're playing it. Yeah, and they add to a narrative where they aren't the actual hero. Like Arnold wasn't actually a Marine in the jungle fighting off Predator. He's acting to be that. So exactly.
They kind of they manufacture, and I think it's with Hollywood in mind that you get the saying, "Don't meet your heroes."
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like that's chiefly in that vein where you have a hero, and it's like, but as soon as you meet them in real life,
There's one exception though. Keanu Reeves is a real life angel and superhero, so he fulfills it. He is John Wick, but yeah.
yeah, but he can't
Besides
tell you.
besides him, yeah, you're right.
The one example that, or the one exception that's given. Okay, we'll write that down. But as far as manufacturing heroes, I think that this is where fiction starts to meet reality in some of those veins. But let's talk about some fictional examples that we brought up. You had one. I think we'll start with. I think it's a good one. So a manufactured hero, someone who is not a hero in the sense that they themselves actually chiefly exhibit heroic traits to then be called a hero, but you're instead crafting that
hmm
to enable someone to take on the mantle of hero for a certain reason. So I liked your example you wanted to start with. We'll go with that.
Yeah, so I know you're not familiar with the movie, but it's a Megamind. It's a cartoon movie. Will Ferrell is the voice of Megamind, and Brad Pitt is the voice of Metro Man, the hero. And in the movie, it's kind of like a cute little cartoon where Megamind is the super villain and Metro Man is like the Superman. And always kind of do these battles, and they're always like really elaborate. But then Metro Man always wins and puts Megamind in jail. And Megamind just he likes the game. He doesn't. It's not like he's actually trying to hurt people. He just likes being this villain trying to beat Metro Man. And then finally, there's a point in the movie. Again, there's a spoiler if people haven't seen
Oh,
Mega Mind or
hold on.
whatever. Yeah, put that up.
I'll use our spoiler banner.
Yeah. So there's a
There you
point
go.
he supposedly defeats Metro Man, and then now he went. No, so now he defeats the superhero, and he then is bored and he wants another hero to fight in this kind of like scrimmage or game. So then he takes this cameraman Hal, who is really nerdy and not. He's kind of cowardice. He does not show any type of heroic traits naturally. But then he takes like a serum. I forgot exactly how he takes like Metro Man's DNA to then add it into Hal to make him have the attributes, the powers of Metro Man. But doing that does not make Hal a superhero, because Hal actually shows his inner heart of his cowardness and not being a actual hero. He actually then turns into the villain. He actually wants to then team up with Megamind, and then Megamind turns it to be the hero trying to defeat Hal. Now he's the supervillain. So it just shows how, like, you can give somebody all these powers and whatever, but that doesn't make a hero. What makes a hero is the heart of the individual. And if you gave superpowers to somebody with a bad heart, they're going to be a villain. You can't make them a hero, because heroes have to have virtues. You have to have attributes. It's not just powers. Like, somebody can have, that's kind of what makes a supervillain to a superhero, right? Because supervillains have powers as well, but then it's what they do with it. So that's kind of the storyline behind it.
And that kind of leads to where I kind of wanted to take it to. Captain America. And I don't feel like I need to add the spoiler to this, because Captain America and his origin story is now pretty well known. So I'm not putting out the spoiler for this one, the spoiler banner for this one. But Captain America in the story is quite literally a manufactured hero, right? They want to find someone to do this, and the real and it's actually part of the major plot, which is, the superhero serum can make someone physically a hero, right? With all the attributes and the stamina and the endurance and the strength and all those things. Mm-hmm. But just like they were saying in the beginning, and of course the doctor's name goes out of my head. Trinity, help me. I just want to say Selvig, but I know that's not it, because that's he's in Thor. That the doctor says, it's what's inside that's revealed. Mm-hmm. Right. So just like you're saying, like, you can give someone super powers, but doesn't make them a hero. It makes them powerful. It may make them authoritative, but it doesn't make them an actual hero. So we've been talking about heroes as far as their like their attributes, what they do, courage, the virtues that they exhibit, and being an example. Oh, Erskine, that's right. Yes, thank you for you introduced him like James Bond. Erskine, that's right. Abraham Erskine. There we go.
Well, that's what's interesting, right? Because you bring up the heart issue, and when you look at it biblically, the entire Bible is always about the heart. It's always a heart issue, and that's why we were talking before, the idea of King Saul. His heart wasn't right, but then King David had a right heart for the Lord. And that's where you have the difference, because Saul had the attributes in the sense of, like, the powers of being a great king, a hero, but his heart wasn't right. David was a smaller, kind of scrawnier dude, did not have the quote unquote heroic traits, even though he was a slingshot and marksman, but on the outward, he didn't look very, like, he wasn't the Arnold Schwarzenegger. He wasn't the Sylvester Stallone ripped guy, but his heart was right with the Lord. He loved the Lord. So,
and that was the difference. And you can go back. We did a whole talk on David and Goliath, that story, principles of that story, because for him, he was a hero, almost like he was a hero looking for an opportunity, right? He was being primed. He was being made ready. So when the opportunity arose, he stepped into the role and was the hero. Yep. Saul had the position, and he failed to take that initiative to actually be a hero at that point, to be the hero that they needed at the time. So then David got to step up into that. And I think that's an important thing. Going back to Captain America, that's sort of the idea was, it's one thing to give powers, but it's another thing for someone to be a hero. So even after he is given those powers, he's paraded around like a hero, even though he is actually heroic. He's paraded around. He's then just following orders, what he's supposed to do. So for the people in charge, he was a hero if he could raise money for the war, right?
Well, what's awesome with the Captain America story is they picked somebody that had the heart. Like, that's kind of like why they picked him, right? Like, he had that drive. He had, like, it's like, the film, how he's always getting back up. He gets beat, he gets punched, but he gets back up. He's got that motivation, he's got that drive, he's got the heart. He wants to protect. So that's another perfect, like, it's a perfect example with Captain America.
It's a great example because the hero exhibits, I'm sorry, the hero exhibits that, but the villain exhibits the opposite of that, right?
Yes,
Took
100%.
took the serum and shows their true colors. Then on the outside, that they are very much the villain,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so you kind of have that, and honestly, this kind of goes to another principle. In order to reveal a hero, most of the time you have to reveal the villain. Like you have to show the villain first, so that the hero can rise, right? So it happened naturally in the story of David and Goliath. Goliath showed up, so then David stepped into the role. But if you're going to actually fully manufacture a hero, you have to then create the situation. You have to also create the villain. So creating a villain sometimes is just like you're going back to the example of Mastermind, right?
Megamind.
That was Megamind. Sorry.
Yeah.
There are
Close enough.
masterminds who
Yes. Yeah.
who are doing this, but you have to make the villain, so that you have the situation for the hero.
Yeah,
Right.
you need well, it's the duality of it. It's pretty much the exact opposite of the hero in that sense of what they're showing. Like you're saying, you have the heart being healthy and good, and then you have the heart being bad. Even though the attributes or the powers are the same for the individuals, the motives are not there. One's self-seeking and one's selfless.
Yeah, I think the part of it also is you mentioned the duality. We resonate with duality. It's presented and it makes complicated things simple,
Mm-hmm.
right? Provo Kid, glad you're here. I'm glad you caught it live too. Welcome. When you have a situation that is complex, it makes it easier to get people to rally when you can simplify it. Here's good guys and bad guys,
Mm-hmm.
right? So anyway, that's kind of the thought for the manufactured portion of it. So the other example that I would probably bring up is actually just the next iteration of Captain America, which is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show, which I know is Trinity's favorite show that has come out in probably forever. So spoilers here for this one, in case you haven't seen it. I don't know if anyone really cares, but the story being Captain America's gone, so now we have to bring him back. We have to somehow show that. And obviously, I was being facetious when I said it was his favorite. But the principle is they have to somehow still have this hero, and so they actually go through and find somebody who it's very much a King Saul kind of situation, who looks like they would be Captain America.
Yeah,
they bring in and present him, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that scenario, they don't have a manufactured villain, but what it does is it brings clarity to who the villain is and those sorts of things. So then he steps up to be the hero, and then this is where the spoilers come in. He's actually not, right? He as time moves forward, he's not really the hero.
Yeah, his true colors come out. You see the heart issue.
And I don't think you would necessarily say he's the villain. He's the present villain, but he all of a sudden becomes an agitator. He's just a disruptor. He's not actually gonna finish the job. And so that's of course where the hero really steps up and becomes the hero.
Yeah, you see he's not fit. He's not fit for the calling.
Right. And then it actually comes out that he's actually the antithesis of. So I think that's where you start to see that. And also just in clarity too, the word anti. So an anti-hero doesn't have to mean in total opposition to a hero. Anti can be a replacement for as well. So it doesn't have to be someone who's against a hero. It could be a replacement for a hero.
Mm-hmm.
So in a real sense, you could have an anti-hero who just steps in for the other hero and is then the replacement for the hero. Mm-hmm. That also would work as far as just how the words work. That's probably not how we would use it. But that's exactly what happens in the show is he's replaced, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's see. Back to the comments here. So when we're talking about this idea for manufacturing a hero, manufacturing a villain, I'll bring it real world here. I'll ruin this whole conversation right now. I'll do it. That's what politics is now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
all
That's
manufactured.
exactly what it
Yep.
is. In the news, you have to have a villain and you have to have a hero.
Yep. And they push a narrative and they prop up who they want to be propped up and then suppress whoever they want to suppress. There's no more really grassroots type of movements where an actual per se hero, right? I mean, that's why they always say it's not an election, it's a selection. Like that you get two people that they want you to pick before. Like there's not an actual, person that comes up. I mean, this doesn't happen. I mean, look at Ron Paul. That was the last one you could say was trying to, and they just get out of here, dude. Just scoot off,
Yeah. And I think when you look at some of those, it's manufactured for both sides. So I'm not taking a side in any
Oh,
of this. I'm saying
100%.
all
Yeah.
politics now is you have to make the opponent the villain. They can't just
100%.
be the opponent.
Yep.
They have to be an actual evil villain to get people to rally up. And it's the same thing that happens in sports when you have these rivalries. Someone has to be the villain. But I think the best example probably in this sort of thing would be wrestling, which I've never really watched. I've watched things about it, but that's what wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it really it is. It's a story. It's manufactured. These people are not really evil. They probably go hang out after. They're not really opposed to each other. It's a narrative and it's a story. And so they have someone who they call it the heel. You play the heel. You are the villain, and everything is pinned on you. And
you know what's funny about that?
What?
You know who played a great heel in the WWE was Donald Trump himself, the greatest heel of all time. So,
what do you know?
The greatest heel. Hey, he's a funny man. He's funny. He got jokes.
He got jokes. He's no, and he's actually very in a lot of ways he's very personable for a lot of people. He's probably the most approachable rich person for a lot of people in certain ways. So and we don't have to like
go on that tangent, but
go on the whole tangent. But there's one moment in the elections, in the election run up, years ago, where he sort of clinched that. Where he went to some really fancy restaurant and ordered a steak. And then the cameras are on him and people are looking at him and he asked for ketchup.
Well, yeah, that's his whole story, right? The Big Macs at the White House and all
Big Macs at the White House.
Yeah.
It's a role to play. So when he's at a fancy restaurant, orders a steak, and then asks for ketchup, which they probably didn't even have. They had to go run somewhere and find ketchup.
Yeah.
That right there was a way for him to show, hey, I'm not part of this elite club over here. I put ketchup on my meat like you do.
Yep.
And
relatable.
Yes. All of a sudden now, and that helped in the whole, like, oh, he's kind of one of us. So whether whatever that is, maybe he really does like ketchup on his steaks. I don't know. But the point was, all of a sudden, he is now relatable to you, which what that does is it makes whoever the villain is more separated from you.
Yeah. Well,
it's the sort of manufactured thing.
And what's so insane with that situation, because you were talking about manufactured heroes or villains, because you'd have one side that made him God, like people that literally worship the man, and then you have people that fear him and hate him as if he's Hitler. Like these two polarizing sides that neither are right. Like both of them are completely wrong in their own aspects. But it's funny how human nature is, with one side being so polarized to worshiping him and he's the hero, and the other side vilifying him that he is this evil dictator. So it's like, my goodness, how human and how we can just be so manipulated with certain propaganda on both sides, like you're saying. Like it's both sides. Like both sides are at fault. Like I try to tell people all the time, the enemy doesn't care what side you're on. He just wants you on a side, because then it creates polarization to then you expend energy. And I have no idea the ramifications spiritually, but there's something that goes on in the spiritual realm where they like energy. They're energy vampires, and there's some type of usefulness for them, and they don't care. They just want you having hate for the other side. So if you're a Republican, hate the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, hate the Republicans. Just have hate in your heart and go against the other side. And that's what that is, right? Building that up. So you got to break out of that paradigm, bro. You got to get out of it. You got to see things that you're being manipulated.
And you have to see it. It's not, and politics is just the easiest way to see it, because it is so in your face, especially now. At the time of this recording, we've got another week for the midterms, right?
Hmm.
So these ideas are very like front and present, but I think for a lot of us, we don't recognize how manufactured some of the stories really are as far as the good guy, bad guy. Even if it's complex, you have to make a good guy, bad guy. There has to be, going back to the westerns, and this is used in hacker circles sort of thing, where you've got white hats and black hats. You could be
Hmm.
I'm a person who searches for vulnerable code in order to reveal security, uh, holes in your security to help you fix them. That's a white hat.
Hmm.
And then you've got those who would take advantage of it, and they're the black hats. But that goes back to the westerns on TV. The reason you had a white hat and a black hat is because on black and white TV, you had to make it really clear who is who.
Hmm.
And so just facial recognition for the resolution of TV at the time was not sufficient enough. So the bad guy had to wear a black hat and the good guy had to wear a white hat. It was very, people want to make it this social thing. It was very much just a very practical thing. You just can't see who's who. So you
Hey,
have to make it real clear: white hat, black hat, good guy, bad guy,
you
for the
know,
story to move forward.
there's something I just actually noticed. You're always wearing a black hat.
Well, part of that is also practical, because if you ever have a white hat, it turns brown or gray
Yeah.
pretty quick. So
Yeah.
I would only have a white hat maybe for a week or two,
Put
especially
a
right here where I grab it. I would have like, oh, there's like a dot right here of
Going to put a
Brian.
Maverick Pilgrim exposed video.
Yeah, he's always wearing a black hat. Yeah, totally. Please do it. Please make that video.
Start doing. You have like little hand signals. Just like,
Yeah,
there
I'll
it
start-
is. There it is.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny you mentioned that too. How many different times do people go like, based just on that evidence, someone is evil, not by their actions or what they say or even their affiliations? Like, it's something manufactured on the outside.
Yeah.
And you could say it's usually not just to tear someone else down. It's usually to allow someone else to rise up. And I think we forget that sometimes when we see focus on someone else being torn down, we have to then kind of look around to see who's then getting pushed up.
Mm-hmm. It's
Right?
true.
Who's that person that they're elevating in
Mhm.
another one? And it could be elevation through, we're going to let that person continue to look evil, and this other person's over here going to look like they're separated from it to allow them to rise up. But when you look at that, you have to wonder why. And so I'll bring it up just for a second. That'll probably get some people pretty angry, and I don't know, maybe get us booted off YouTube. I don't even know about these rules. But the Russia-Ukraine situation, I'm not going to talk details or whatever, but all I'm going to say is people are looking at that situation like it's a white hat, black hat situation. A good
Mhm.
guy and a bad guy. Let me tell you what, that's not the situation. It's not that simple.
No.
But you have to make it that simple for people to engage with it. Because if
Yeah.
you actually sat down with the complexities, people would come out of there going like, I don't know.
But it's kind of like World War One too. Because what's funny, because I love, I'm a big World War One and two buff. People, they don't have the proper understanding. They like clump World War Two with World War One, where they think like Germany was super evil in World War One as well, and it's not the case at all. Like Nazi Germany was not in World War One. Like World War One was not the same situation. Germany was not like this. They didn't have concentration camps. They weren't doing evil. They didn't have the cult of the SS and this, all this evil spirits behind it. But because
Yeah.
people see World War II so much, and they just automatically clump it, and you're seeing that right now in the sense of 100% Ukraine good, Russia bad. And there's evil on both sides, there's good on both sides, whatever. But your point, it's not as simple. It's not black and white. It's not bad guy, good guy. I mean,
Right.
you can go into all wars and see that it's very complex.
Yeah. And I think I've said this other places too, other videos, but the reason they are talking about World War III is because it makes you think of World War I and II.
Yeah.
That there's a very clear good guy and a very clear bad guy.
Yeah.
And by talking about it that way, you start to treat it that way. So then those emotions, strong emotions that rise up, that one is this virtuous, moral, uplifted side versus a horrible, vile, decrepit side. You have to have that kind of scenario. And when you are taking geopolitics that are incredibly complex and boiling it down to a white hat and a black hat, bad things can happen.
Oh yeah. Have you heard the Norm Macdonald, the quote where, "Hey, look at that. all the good guys or all the guys that have won every war are good guys. Go
Wow.
figure. Like,
I did
wow.
see that. I
Yeah,
think you sent it to me actually.
it's so great. I love that
It's
one
like,
so much.
wow, looking back at history, the good guys have always won.
Go figure.
Wow.
That's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really funny.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, totally. And we could actually, I think that's one of the ways to turn around. That's your assignment, everyone. Look at the news today and look, are they making someone the total good guy when they might not want to be?
Mhm.
And I'm
There's
not gonna say anything, but I'm gonna go back to an earlier. I'm just gonna put that up there. You can kind of look at that.
yeah.
Are they making someone the hero or villain?
Oh yeah. Dude,
That's your assignment.
I tell you what, man, the more I'm living in life, the more I'm starting to believe that life is a simulation. Like like it is like seriously, like I know God's created, but like how it's a movie. Everything is like even our like the people on the world stage, like you're talking about, like you just put up Elon the villain, right? And then you have Bill Gates, this guy who is just all these different characters that if you're going to make a movie, those would be the people that you'd actually cast for their role, for
Right.
whatever role. It's like this is too perfect. What like it's reality is truly stranger than fiction is so much more entertaining when you actually start like researching and looking in and having the veil kind of lift from your eyes and seeing people for their own because there's always an agenda. There's always like that's the whole point of this. There's a narrative and an agenda to push a certain person or to suppress a certain person to then get motives across and try to have whatever end game they have. And usually if you follow the money, you'll see where you'll get a broad picture of what the purpose is, especially when you follow the money. It's very
Yeah.
clear. I don't know how people. That's the saddest part. You know, people will just blindly follow. Like again, like talk about not wanting to get kicked off YouTube, but like big pharma, everyone could get on board that they're evil. Like they lose settlements with poisoning people, the opiate, the epidemic of opiates and all of that. That's evil. And then just forget about that. They're good now. They care about you. You need to take this, and everyone just forgets that these are evil entities that only care about profits and only care about their shareholders and only care about selfish their own self for money.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think there are just to kind of do a hard transition here. I think there are also some biblical examples we could use
100%.
that would really highlight this. And a couple, I think there are a couple of them that are familiar, and we'll kind of talk about that now. Um, and I mean, if you haven't read the Bible in a while and you don't know these, I'm not going to put the spoiler alert up there because the book is thousands of years old. So you should have known by now. But I think one of them that's really clear is the manufacturing of the golden calf at the foot of Mount Sinai. And I'll set it up real quick. This is most people know the Exodus story. Moses leads the a nation out of Egypt who they were enslaved there. There's all the plagues. They cross through the Red Sea. They make it to the other side, and what they are going to is they're going to what is called the mountain of God to worship the Lord. That is where Moses then ascends the mountain to receive the law. And this is going to be God's standard for them to live. It's going to give them culture and civility, all these sorts of things. That's where the 10 Commandments come out of. So while Moses is up there talking with Yahweh, back down on the ground, back down on surface level, things are not very peaceful. The people are restless. The people also, the people at the base of the mountain have grown up in Egypt. They are used to having tangible gods they can see. Yahweh is not a God you can see. And so they want a God like the other nations have. This is normal to them. It's probably abnormal that they haven't received some sort of idol already for most of their minds, in their own minds. So they want something. So they take all the gold or a bunch of gold. I don't know if it's all of it. Probably not. They give it to Aaron and say, "Make us a god." So Aaron, he takes Aaron's Moses' brother. He's supposed to be the high priest. He makes and manufactures a calf. But they don't say that this is Baal. They don't say it's another god. They say, this is Yahweh that took us out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
But they've manufactured their God.
Yeah.
They've manufactured the hero.
And with that, that's something that you notice constantly that we like it's a common theme that we make God in our own image, that we place him in a box. Like that's why you have to be very careful when you see somebody that says, "Oh, I believe in Jesus" or "I follow Jesus." It's like, well, what Jesus do you follow? I'm hoping it's the biblical account of Jesus, not these false interpretations of Jesus of, oh, he's this, oh, he's just a good teacher, oh, he's whatever it may be. This idea of, like you're saying, manufacturing this idol who isn't the real representation of God, of Yahweh. It's in your own mind, just like the Israelites did with this golden calf.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll shout out to Derek Gilbert and the Iron and Myth show that they do. But listening to some of those guys, I think you had Doug Van Dorn, Dr. Judd Burton, and Brian Godawa, along with Derek Gilbert. They were all talking about this, but they were talking about how they're going through different examples in Hollywood of the use of the gods and those type of things. And they brought up the show American Gods, which I've never seen, so I'm not advocating for it. I'm not familiar with it, but they described a scene where. So I guess spoilers. Should we add the spoiler banner just for this for American Gods? I don't know. It's a spoiler to me too. I don't even know what's going on.
You got the banner. You might as well use it, right?
I got it. I might as well throw it up there. The story, they go to some party, and I think it's in connection with Easter, and they're looking for somebody, but they end up going there and looking out, and at this pool party is that he goes and asks, "Where's Jesus?" And there's like, "Oh, over there," and it's like all of these different Jesuses. Like, which one is real? Well, that one is the Presbyterian one. That's the Baptist one. That's the Catholic one. And there's like, well, where's the real? It's like, oh, the original one's sitting over there on the thing. Like, that's the original Jesus, and everything else is a manufactured one.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of highlights this thing where each denomination sometimes creates their own kind of idea of who Jesus, and just people in general, they'll create an idea of Jesus, which may not be in any way based on the historical Jesus or the Jesus that we see recorded. It's a Jesus of their own making, which does highlight this point. And it's interesting because I do believe that the Neil Gaiman, I think, is the author. He says he's an atheist, like he doesn't believe in any gods. So it's easy for him to just kind of point out, like, well, look at that. And I think we'd actually point out the same.
Yeah,
that is true. That there are people, they manufacture a Jesus in their own minds, which may or may not resemble the real Jesus at all.
You have it all everywhere. I mean, look at Islam. They have a Jesus. They believe in Jesus. They just don't believe in the biblical account. It's
right.
Yep.
So I think that happens. We create and manufacture a God of our own choosing, of our own making. Another sad example is North Korea, where they have made the Un family. The Kim family, sorry. Specifically, Kim Jong-un has pushed this to the extent that it's right. It's arisen to, but their family is seen as God. That's the family of God, and Kim Jong-un specifically is the son of God. He takes on that role of essentially Jesus, and it is so imprinted onto that current society. That's what they hold to. That's what they believe. That's what is taught in school. Oh, where did the world come from? Oh, Kim Jong-un's father created the world. And I mean, that's legitimately what they believe.
What's similar with like World War II, like past Japan, like the emperor was God, right? Like they actually saw him that way. And then when he fell, then their idol was broken. But
Right.
yeah, very similar. It always happens with countries that can be isolated, and kind of like North Korea is very isolated, right? They were able to take away, again, going back to being able to push a narrative. Japan was isolated, able to then indoctrinate, have an agenda, and push a narrative. That's the same thing, right? But that's why you see such a big battle right now in the States with this free speech and everything, with having open information. Because if you can't isolate and control a narrative, then you lose control over pushing a hero or a villain or propping up somebody, because there's information that then will contradict their points. So that's why it's critical for what you're seeing right now for free speech to be taken away, in control of what information comes, or, oh, that's misinformation, oh, that's whatever. It's like, it's very clear how they get their agenda pushed.
Yeah, and I think instead of isolating groups geographically, I think a lot of times it's done now through algorithms where someone thinks they're in a majority camp,
Yeah, you're
but
up.
they're not. They're in an
Yeah,
isolated camp.
yep, an echo chamber, 100%,
And they would not recognize it because they'll say something and they're encouraged by so
100%.
many, and someone else will say something and they'll see them attacked, right? So
Yep.
they'll see like, oh, clearly we have the right. And I think this is something I'm working on for another video, but the concept of consensus
Mm.
is just it's so important for us to understand, and I think it's going to be something that's pushed really hard the next 2 years, is the concept and the idea of consensus and how that connects to different things like democracy, to
Mhm.
whatever straw man they want to set up. It
Yep.
connects there, and they'll push it that way, and consensus will become the new morality. It'll become the new rubber stamp. Well, if we have consensus, then that is correct. So we're democratizing then truth, which
Yep.
is very, very, very dangerous.
Yep.
The last example, and I think this is it's a fitting last example that we see from Scripture, is actually on the towards the end, which is the Antichrist. I think is an example of a manufactured hero, which might sound weird to some people if you haven't really looked at it. In most of the stories, the Antichrist just looks evil. He's clearly slimy and gross. If you look at one side, he's also then clearly an evil dictator sort of person that you can then identify that way, or whatever. But the Antichrist in Scripture is a manufactured hero, and I don't think people really understand that.
Mhm.
Don't understand it very well. But what it looks like in the book of Revelation, what it looks like is the situation on earth is quite dire. And then the Antichrist steps up on the stage and becomes a hero. They give him power. It says that the kings of the earth, the leaders at that time, give over power to
Mhm.
this Antichrist. And we talked about before, anti doesn't have to mean opposite of, it can mean in place of. And I think that really is. He becomes a in place of Messiah. That's what Christ means. Christ is just Greek for Messiah, which
Mhm.
just means an anointed one. But you have the Antichrist he's in place of. And so
Mhm.
he will stand up there and people will say, how could he not be the savior of the world? Look at what
Yeah.
he's done. He has defeated this other great evil, whatever that might be at that time and however it looks.
Mhm.
And he becomes someone they throw their support behind.
Yep. 100%. And I mean, in the scriptures, besides Jesus, the Antichrist is most spoken about behind, second behind, because God wants us to be aware and alert of who this character is going to be a very important character for, for the world. Clearly, it's going to be the deception that even the elect could be fooled if so, right? Like it's
Right.
so it's something that we need to be alert and aware of. But it is the perfect example of the anti-hero, or this propping up of a quote unquote hero who doesn't, again, back to the heart issue. He's going to show all these outward appearances of being a hero, of being this savior, whatever miracles, whatever things he does to save politics or peace deals or whatever. Those are going to look good on the out, so that you're going to have people going, well, why can't you just support this guy? Why can't, this is amazing? Like, he's doing such great things and wonders. But back to your point, when you have the scriptures aligned, he's slimy, he's evil. There's darkness behind it.
Yeah, and I think that concept of being made, we talked about this before, being the manufactured hero. The more you prop up the manufactured hero, the more you have to demonize and vilify either someone else who is the villain or is being proposed to be the villain. So in
Mhm.
this scenario, the more that happens, the more the Antichrist is made to be the hero, the more Jesus is actually made to be the villain. To where you get the
100%.
situation at the end, and people think Armageddon is a whole bunch of different things. What it really is Jesus returning to Earth and the Antichrist trying to fight against. But you can understand someone who's stuck in the story, stuck in the milieu, the back and forth, the white hat, black hat. All of a sudden, they see Jesus as the invader and the
Mhm.
Antichrist as the hero. And I really do think that will be the scenario at the end, where whoever your conquering hero is on Earth is actually in opposition to
Hmm.
this one, which is of course this massive crazy deception that goes out there. And
Yeah.
I really like Trinity's comment here: know the enemy, see them, keep them exposed, so we know who they are. Exactly, and that's actually in Scripture. It says that those who know truth, those who are in the light, are supposed to see these works of evil, and we're supposed to expose the workers of evil, which will usually mean, to bring it kind of full circle, you go against the consensus.
Yeah.
Because everyone else will be in agreement. That's our hero. And we have to say, you know what? It's not a hero. We have to pull it
Yep.
back. Maybe they're not the ultimate villain, but they're not a hero.
100%.
So,
Can I
any other
agree more?
last thoughts on Antichrist?
No, but I like your point about pulling back on the hero thing. Not to try to be polarizing here, but the idea back to with like Trump and everything, because he became a hero for the Christian community, which I give it. The politics or the policies I would 100% like better than what's in place right now. But he is also this propped up narrative for the Christian community to follow, which he isn't actually bringing forth proper biblical understanding. He's not the savior, like Jesus
Right.
is the savior. That's it. There's no man there. Back to this narrative of being propped up. He was what was given to us. Some people will say, oh no, he's outside of it. I don't think so. I have my own opinion on it, but the idea again of him being propped up when it wasn't a natural thing, wasn't a natural grassroots, he was given to us as a hero, and people then take it. And it goes back to what you're just bringing up, how people will then fall into that when as children of light we need to be exposing darkness at all times and not just taking in the narrative, not just taking in what they want us to believe, that we actually think for ourselves. We go to the scriptures, we allow God's spirit to discern for us and use wisdom to be able to decipher wolves in sheep's clothing and who actually has a good heart and is following the Lord biblically and actually a hero, or who is not. We never brought up the idea about how, like, for the last 2 years, there was a big push of, oh, these are heroes, but then they will switch the narrative depending on what's going on in the media. Kind of like you're talking like the police thing where, police
Right.
brutality, they're evil. But then if there's a crisis like the fires, they need to then switch it that they're heroes. And then, oh, now your heroes are like the pandemic,
Right.
oh, they're your heroes. So they just switch the narrative. Oh, villain, another hero, another villain again.
Yeah, exactly. And living here in Northern California, that we got to see that played out, because during the fires, every firefighter is the hero, every paramedic is the hero, policeman, because they're doing these incredibly heroic things, right? We've got lots of stories here of first responders who show up and they're literally jumping into houses that are on fire and pulling people out before it like explodes. Like crazy stories. People just like grabbing people, throwing them in their cars and just driving through walls of fire. I mean, clearly heroic things, and we should highlight that, but then all of a sudden you have where society decides for a hot moment, all police are evil and all police must submit to something. So then all of a sudden the narrative changed, and then a year earlier you had all these parades for first responders, and then you have protests against first responders, that all police are evil, and it's terrible and all that. And then we have more fires here, and then it switches back. Now they're all heroes again.
Yep.
And so it was almost so blatant.
It is.
I remember telling my wife, I'd be
Oh,
like, is anyone else seeing this? Is anyone else getting whiplash
dude,
from the switches here?
it's brutal. Even with like the nurses situation, like in 2020, before the shot, they're heroes. But then in 2021, if they did not get a shot, you're evil, get out of there. Like they just were a hero a year ago fighting, this virus, but now because they're not listening and doing something that that goes against their bodily autonomy or whatever, the idea of
Yeah,
they are now a villain, like because they're not doing what they're told. So again, back to this foot, and but what's insane to me is how the general public as a whole, obviously there's outliers, but they just go with it, like, oh no, yeah, all right, they're bad now, they don't deserve a job, like screw them, like they were just heroes supposedly a year ago, like what
exactly.
really, like they
And
were fine and now they're not.
and just so that people understand, what we're trying to say is people who do heroic acts should be regarded as heroes. People who are doing things that are selfless, they should be honored for doing selfless things. Things that people are doing heroic things should be honored for doing heroic things. So we're not saying first responders aren't,
100%.
uh,
Yeah.
doctors aren't. What we're saying is that they get used,
Yep.
they get put on posters, and they pump up this narrative. And then you'll notice it when then they have to switch it around. And so we're against the marketing of heroes and villains to be used to push one agenda or another, because there's a snapback in the media. The media is like a rubber band. As far as you stretch one direction, it'll snap you back even harder.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying is these manufactured things are not healthy. They're not healthy for people when they're trying to figure out how the world really is working.
It's not healthy. Think how evil it was during 2020 and 2021 where, oh, you're not essential. Telling a human being, oh, you're
Oh, my
not
goodness.
essential, stay home. Like, talk about, and then, oh, but these people over here are heroes. You are non-essential. Just go die. Like, that's literally what like, you don't matter.
How did you get benched? You got benched in real life? Like, oh no, you
Yeah.
can go, you're out of the game for a bit.
Yeah,
That's terrible.
So then it creates a section of these people that then now get self-pride and boastful, like, oh, I'm a hero, you know, because they're being propped up with, oh, you're doing these great things, which you may have, but now they're being even like inflated. They're getting smoke blown up their, you know, rear end, and their heads are getting huge. And then you have now this other section of people that, oh, you're not essential, you're not important, you know, you can't go to work, you can't make money for your family, you got to stay home and just shut up, slave. And now you have, so it's like again, back to this polarization. And it's so depressing. It's sad how it is.
It was funny when the Grubhub guy got included with the nurses as being essential,
dude,
because you're at home and it's like,
bro,
thanks for my Chick-fil-A.
Bro, it's insane. Like I was working, and then people be like, oh, thanks for because I was essential supposedly, and I'm like, it's just my job. This is not. No, don't stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, it really is it's someone else using someone else. Whether you use them to be the hero or the villain, it's someone else using you. And probably the people who we think are extremely evil probably don't deserve as much of the evil that we place on them. And as far as in those things, and the heroes probably aren't as good as you think, right?
Yeah.
Just to kind of catch up on some of these comments, which I really do appreciate. Everyone needs to know who the town weirdo was, right? To tell their kids, don't go there, stay away from that guy. And there was a warning and knowledge, but also let that person live their life. And I think that's a really important point, because there is a biblical principle here of vengeance is mine. The Lord is going to take care of those different things. That is very much a biblical idea of when you take up the responsibility of doling out actual physical judgments on people without some of those structures that do, right? We have laws, we have different things where there's a process and those different things. But if you yourself go and you take care of those things, as an anti-biblical response to that, because there is no judgment that you can lay on someone else that is as appropriate as what God can do, because God can see the heart and can appropriately apply judgments to those people, right? So yeah,
100%.
that guy's shifty. Hey, kids, don't go over there. Could turn out to be that person just is really lonely, really had something just really gruff exterior, but really isn't evil, right? So by just saying like, let's stay away from him, but whatever, that's probably not the kindest thing to do. But at the very least, like we're not like stringing people up because we think they're different, and that's the difference, right? That's the difficulty in that. And again, you're manufacturing heroes and villains.
Yep.
That's just on like a suburban level, maybe.
100%. Well, that goes back to, like you're saying, biblically, it's all about a matter of faith. Like if you do that, you're showing a lack of faith. Like you're pointing out that God is a perfect, just, judger. He's perfect with it. He knows the heart, so he'll give the perfect judgment for the individual. And you having faith in him, knowing that it's just on his time, that's why you give it to him. But if you take vengeance in your own hands, you're showing a lack of faith in the God that you believe, if you are a believer, thinking that you are going to be this judge, and you're putting yourself as God now. So you're making yourself the idol or the judge, instead of having the faith that God's going to be perfect in that. So
yeah. You have to give that over. It is a form of submission and humility to say that someone else, in this scenario we're talking about, when God has the correct and proper knowledge to actually apply correct and proper judgment.
Yep.
And this one here, none of us are perfect. More people look up to you, I should say. The further you fall in their eyes over a real or perceived transgression. And I think
100%.
that's important as well. Is that we may not even recognize that we're propping someone up as a hero when they don't deserve it, or and then when we actually look at them, we're shocked that they aren't really the hero that we built them up to be, and that's really true. Like, we have to remember that humans are we're faulty. We're fallen. We don't do things properly, right? Even in the victories that we have, we probably, oh, someone gives you high fives and says, oh, you did such a great job, and in our minds we're like, I could have done more.
Yeah.
I could have done that better. I did it, but I did it for myself, for the high fives. Like, I didn't really do it for other people. Like, there's a lot of different things that we say, like, we even know for ourselves. You can feel it, like, I'm kind of being propped up, and maybe we just kind of go with it because, hey, I'll take high fives. But yeah, I think when more that we look into that, say, like, wow, people do bad things. Like, good people don't put it the scenario that way. It's like, what happens when good people do bad things, quote unquote, right? We
Yeah,
don't
right.
think
Yeah.
about that a lot of times either.
No.
Well,
That's
this has been a good. Do you have anything else to add? I think we should maybe land the plane.
I think we're good. I think we touched all the topics with it for this topic. Because if we'll just start something else and go down other rabbit holes at this point. Yeah. So
There's so much more, and we'll save it for next time. Chew, I've appreciated you. Appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for everybody who's been in the chat, who's been commenting, who's been watching us live. If you haven't caught it live, feel free to put your comments down below if you do have anything else to add to the conversation. And thank you so much. We'll do what we can to be back here next week. And yeah, we hope that you all have a wonderful day. Make it a good one. It's the only one you got. And yeah, unless you have another sign off, I'm going to say, Pilgrim on, my friends. We'll see you out there.
God bless, guys. Love you all.